Good morning, everybody. This is Billy Trout, manager of the Taxpayer Education section in the Taxpayer Services Unit at the Tennessee Department of Revenue. And I want to welcome you to today's presentation on alcohol taxes in Tennessee, kind of an overview of some of the major components of alcohol tax in our state. Got some good folks here with you today. I want to introduce them to you very quickly. First of all, we have Katie Julian, who is the hostess with the mostest, so to speak. She's been doing these webinars now for a good long time. She hasn't bored anyone to death yet, and this will not start today either. So we're in good hands with Katie as always. Dan Vincent is here. He's our assistant director, or one of our assistant directors in taxpayer services. And then we have Kellen Wheeler, who is a specialist in our miscellaneous tax office, who deals with alcohol taxes and some of our other unusual taxes, I guess you could say, in Tennessee. And we welcome Kellen. And then finally, and last and not but not least, is Bernadette Welch. She is a senior tax counsel with our legal office in the Department of Revenue. So we welcome each and every one of our panelists here today, as well as you and participants. And I'll go ahead and get out of the way for a few minutes and let Katie take over and do some housekeeping and begin the presentation. Katie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Billy, and thanks to Bernadette and Kellen for being our subject matter experts today. I'm hoping to be able to breeze through a lot of these slides rather quickly so that we can get to some questions that you may have at the end. Just a few things before we move along here. We will have a recording of this presentation on our website by tomorrow, maybe later this afternoon, but definitely by tomorrow. You see here the route to get there, tn.gov/revenue, click on taxpayer education, then webinars, and then we have a vast webinar video library. If you haven't been to our webinar video library, please check it out. You can sort it by tax type, you can search it by keywords. We have now, I can't remember, it's over 60 webinars that are out there. So this one will be in the library tomorrow. We'll give you this information again at the end. For general questions about taxes, you can email us at revenue.support@tn.gov or call our general tax line at 615-253-0600. At the end of this webinar, we're going to give you some direct contacts for just questions about alcohol taxes. So I believe Dan and Billy or both, somebody put the link to this presentation PDF, the slides, in the chat, but you can also scan this QR code. We'll give you a couple more opportunities to do that as well. We will have the chat closed down for now during the slides, and then we'll open it up when we get to the end if we have time for questions. So moving along here, we've got a lot of content to go over today on Tennessee's alcohol taxes. Again, you can here's another opportunity to scan the QR code to get a copy of these slides. So whether an alcoholic beverage, wine, or beer is subject to Tennessee tax, and determining the party responsible for paying the tax will depend on several things, like the alcohol content, the type of alcohol, who is selling or distributing the alcohol. We're going to unpack all of that today. You can see here the alcohol rules and laws are in TCA 57.1.101, and you can see here the rules and regulations that these laws and rules are located in. We're going to be talking about various alcohol taxes today, just an overview. We're going to talk about what is taxed, who pays the tax, the rates and the due dates for the taxes, some exceptions, bond information, and some other info. We'll share some resources with you. And like I said, hopefully we'll have time for some questions. When we started putting this presentation together, realized pretty quickly that this could be pretty much an all day long webinar, quite frankly. But so we're just touching the high points here and have decided already that we are going to break this down and have several smaller webinars to dive into the details about several of these alcohol taxes. So first off, I want to point you guys to a manual that we have dedicated just to Tennessee's alcohol taxes. Again, this link is not live on the webinar. You can't click on it through this screen, but if you do have the slides, which here's one more opportunity to scan this QR code and get a copy of the slides, then you can follow that link. But all of our tax manuals are fantastic. We are updating them daily. Great resource for information there. If you haven't discovered this manual in particular and you work anywhere in the alcohol tax world, highly recommend that you follow this resource and check it out. All right, so the manufacture, distribution, and retail sale of alcoholic beverages, wine, and beer in Tennessee are regulated by multiple entities you see here. Alcoholic beverages such as wine and distilled spirits are regulated at the state level, and beer is primarily regulated at the local level. So starting with here, we've got three entities here: the Tennessee Department of Revenue, the ABC, and local government. So we'll start here with the TDOR, as we like to call ourselves. We are responsible for registering every brand of alcoholic beverage, wine, and beer with alcohol content of 5% by weight or greater distributed in Tennessee, as well as every beer manufacturer and beer wholesaler operating in the state. We also collect the alcoholic beverage taxes and state beer taxes, including the alcoholic beverage gallonage tax, the wine gallonage tax, alcoholic beverage enforcement tax, beer barrelage tax, and a portion of the wholesale beer tax, among other taxes. So the ABC, the Tennessee Alcoholic Beverage Commission, is the primary licensing and regulatory body for anyone wishing to engage in the manufacture, distillation, or sale of alcoholic beverages. We work very closely with the ABC. The licensing and the taxes go hand in hand. The alcoholic beverages within the ABC's purview include distilled spirits, liquor, wine, and high alcohol content beer. ABC does not regulate the manufacture or sale of beer with alcohol content of 8% by weight or less. The ABC issues numerous alcoholic beverages licenses and permits, including manufacturer licenses, wholesaler licenses. You can see here the list of different licenses that they handle there, and a link to their website, tn.gov/ABC. It's as easy as that. All right, local governments, they regulate the manufacture and sale of beer, as well as the sale of alcoholic beverages for consumption on premises within their jurisdictions. Local governments also collect the local beer tax, including the annual privilege tax and the wholesale beer tax. And some municipalities also impose an inspection fee on licensed retailers of alcoholic beverages. We're not going to be talking about that today, but just for your information there. Okay, so Tennessee has a three-tier system for selling and distributing alcoholic beverages, wine, high alcohol content beer. We'll be defining all those here in just a minute. But generally, a licensed retailer may only purchase these items from a licensed wholesaler. Now, notice I said generally here. We got some exceptions, and we'll go over those later. So yeah, they can only purchase these items from a licensed wholesaler. A licensed wholesaler can only purchase from a licensed manufacturer or importer, and neither a licensed manufacturer, importer, nor a licensed wholesaler can sell directly to the consumer. However, again, there are some exceptions. There's always exceptions, right? We're going to address those a little bit later in this presentation. Here you see just a listing of the various alcohol taxes and reports. We are going to be touching on most of these today, at least. We are not going to be going into mixing bar gross receipts at all today. No alcohols involved there. It's just the mixing bar stuff. So maybe a later webinar on that as well. Okay, so a couple boring slides here, but just have to get these out of the way. Official definitions, because they're real important here. Although the alcoholic beverage tax statutes refer to alcohol content by weight, which we're calling ABW, the industry typically measures alcohol content by volume, ABV. So here's just a little way to convert that. We're going to be discussing everything by weight, though. This ABW is what you're going to see referred to in a lot of the definitions and tax law with regards to alcohol taxes. So alcoholic beverage It is defined as alcohol, spirits, liquor, wine, and high alcohol content beer, and every liquid containing alcohol, spirits, or wine, 8% alcohol by weight or higher. Beverages containing less than 0.5 alcohol by volume other than wine are not considered to be alcoholic beverages and are not subject to regulation or taxation. I personally love kombucha, and recently I bought some kombucha at my grocery store and I got carded for it, and I realized I looked on it and I thought, oh gosh, this has just a tad bit over the amount that would not be make it considered an alcoholic beverage, but I was careful not to drink that during the day, right? Beer, products made from the normal alcoholic fermentation of malt or other cereal grains, sugar, or fruit ingredients used to make cider, and having an alcoholic content of not more than 8% alcohol by weight, and that do not contain spirits or wine. Of course, high content beer is going to be beer that has more than 8% alcohol by weight. One other definition we're going to talk here about is brands, because we're going to go into brand registration here in a minute. Regarding the definition of brand, Tennessee goes by the terms defined by the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau of the U.S. Department of Treasury, also referred to as TTB, for products bearing a distinct trade name. So for every distilled spirit, wine product, beer product with an alcohol content of 5% by weight or greater, and high alcohol content beer. Within the group of wine or distilled spirit products marketed under a particular brand name, products that fall within the separate classes or types as defined by the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, also known as ATF, they have their standards of identity are considered a brand. Also, brand is considered the name, trademark, or trade name of a product as indicated on the COLA, which is the certificate of label approval that is registered with the TTB. So jumping right into brand registration here. So every manufacturer or importer distributing brands, as previously defined, in Tennessee has to register that brand it distributes and pay the brand registration tax prior to distributing the brand. Prior, very important part there, that it's prior to distributing the brand in this state. No wholesaler can receive, accept, or offer for sale any brand unless it's been registered with us. You can see a link here over to a list that the Department of Revenue maintains of all active brand registrations. You can get there by our TNTAP homepage. One thing to note, if a product uses the same brand name on the COLA for individual varieties of the brand, the product may be registered as one brand with the varieties listed within that one brand. So an example here, their brand name on the COLA is Swiss Family Wine. Smith Family Wine can include a Chardonnay, a Sauvignon Blanc, a Pinot Grigio, and although all of these are separate varieties of the Smith family wine, they constitute one brand name and one registration for Tennessee brand registration purposes. So every manufacturer or importer distributing brands in Tennessee must register each brand it distributes and pay the brand registration privilege tax prior to distributing. We've already discussed that. Here you can see what is required in order to register the brand. There are some steps to accomplish first before you can register a brand. You see a link here at the bottom of this slide to, it's a link to the paper registration form, but there is a TNTAP registration for this. You can register it through your TNTAP account. One thing to note, if the entity completing the return is not the producer, bottler, or manufacturer, the return must be accompanied by a Prime American source letter for imported products or an appointment letter for domestic products. This is Kellen's area. Kellen, all day long, I think, deals with these brand registrations. So hopefully if you've got questions about that, we can discuss those a little bit later if we've got time. So payment of the initial brand registration privilege tax that is paid by, as we mentioned, the manufacturer or importer. It's $250 per brand for distilled spirits. There's no fee for wine for this initial registration. there's a renewal we'll talk about here in a minute, and it's $100 per brand of high alcohol beer, high alcohol content beer. And the due date is just before it's brought into the state. So there is brand renewal. Each brand must be renewed each year, and brands not renewed will no longer be approved for sale in Tennessee. Again, this is paid by the manufacturer or importer. You can see here the prices per year to renew the brand registration. This is due annually on May 31st. All right, so the manufacturer or importer may only introduce a brand if there's a written contract between the manufacturer or importer and the Tennessee wholesale distributor that will sell the brand in the state. No manufacturer or importer is permitted to transfer a brand from one wholesale distributor to another or to terminate a contract without written permission from the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Revenue. You can see here that there is a process for transferring or terminating a brand. You'll find much more information about this in our alcohol taxes manual, or if you have specific questions about that, I think Bernadette, if I am correct here, is kind of a subject matter expert on this topic as well. So the first tax we're going to talk about here is the alcoholic beverage enforcement tax. So we impose an alcoholic beverage enforcement tax on the wholesale sale of alcoholic beverages, wine, and high alcohol content beer in the state. It's paid by the wholesaler, and it is 15 cents per case, due monthly on the 15th day of the month. Well, what is considered a case? A case of alcoholic beverages is determined by the amount of alcohol. What specifically constitutes a case is found in the Tennessee rules, and it is pretty complex. Cases can be of assorted size bottles and brands, though alcohol types cannot be mixed in the same case. You see here examples of what constitutes a case: 3 containers of distilled spirits with a capacity of more than 64 ounces, but not more than 128 ounces each, or 12 containers of wine with a capacity of more than 25.6 ounces, but not more than 32 ounces each. So for further information about this, you can see the rules and regs 1320-4-6-.04. Regarding returned cases, cases of alcohol returned to a wholesaler by a retailer are exempt from the wholesale enforcement tax, and the number of return cases are reported on the tax return. There's a line item for that. All right, we've got another alcoholic beverage and wine tax here called the gallonage tax. And I'm going to stop and take just a moment here because we're taking, as I mentioned earlier, just a very bird's eye view of all of this, general overview. I did decide after putting this presentation together that we're definitely going to have an alcoholic beverage slash wine slash high content beer tax webinar just dedicated to brand registration and these two taxes we've just talked about, the enforcement tax and this gallonage tax, because there's a whole lot more to dive into on these topics. So Tennessee levies a tax on every gallon of alcoholic beverage sold or distributed in this state. Generally, this tax is paid by wholesaler distributors. Depending on the manner of distribution, manufacturers, common carriers, direct shippers, wineries may be responsible for collecting this tax. And we're going to break that down just a bit here for a minute. Wholesalers, any wholesaler that imports alcoholic beverages into Tennessee or receives alcoholic beverages manufactured in Tennessee for eventual retail sale in any size retail container or in-state distribution by sale or gift will pay the gallonage tax on each gallon or portion of a gallon that's distributed or sold in Tennessee. Wineries that sell their own products on the manufacturing premises must also remit the wine gallonage tax on those sales. Additionally, a winery that self-distributes its product pursuant to a self-distribution permit also must remit the wine gallonage tax for wine distributed in that manner. So if a winery receives product from a farm wine producer, then manufactures and returns the finished product to the wine farm producer, the winery is also responsible for the wine gallonage tax on that wine. Manufacturers, any Tennessee licensed manufacturer can pay the gallonage tax directly to the department on the amount of its own product that is needed for its own use, not to exceed 100 cases per month. For example, when a manufacturer retains product to be used at a company event or a party, the Tennessee licensed manufacturer may pay the department the gallonage tax directly there. Common carriers such as commercial airlines, paddle wheel steamboat companies, and passenger trains must report the wholesale gallonage tax on alcoholic beverages they bring into Tennessee on which they have not already paid alcoholic beverage taxes. There is a specific formula that they should follow that involves the amount of total passenger miles traveled while they're here in Tennessee. There's also a direct shipper report that may be relevant to some common carrier scenarios, and we're going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. So you see here the tax fees and rates and due dates. Won't go over all of those right now because you can see them right there in front of you. And for the sake of time, we'll just go ahead and move along here to the next slide. Examples. Wholesalers must properly, I'm sorry, exceptions. Wholesalers must properly document each type of the following sales to claim an exemption on their gallonage tax return. Here's a list of examples. Special occasions licenses, exports to out of state, sales to military installations, sales to other wholesalers, returns to a manufacturer, damaged or deteriorated merchandise, lost by fire or acts of nature, sale of sacramental wine. All of this uh, is broken down on the return as well. So you see here the bond, there is a bond requirement for the gallonage tax, pretty cut and dry at 75,000 is the initial bond amount. Then at the end of that 4-month period, the amount will be adjusted to not less than 110% of the average gallonage tax liability for the initial 4 months. And that'll be for the remainder of the 12-month period or until July 1, whichever occurs first. And then in subsequent years, the amount of the bond will not be less than 110% of the wholesaler's average monthly tax liability. A few examples here. These are not all examples, but just a few examples of where there is an exception to the 3-tiered system. Now, just a reminder, that's where, you know, the manufacturer, let's go back to it real quick. Here's should have noted where I was. The 3-tier system goes from licensed manufacturer importer to the wholesaler to the retailer, right? Well, let's guess here where I was. Sorry, y'all. We're not making you dizzy here. The exceptions to that are a few examples of exceptions to that are that manufacturers can sell products manufactured on the premises at retail on the premises or serve samples without cost. Distillers can provide products for retail license, consumer tastings through a licensed wholesaler, and wineries can serve wine without charge as complimentary samples for tastings at the winery, sell wine at retail in sealed containers at their winery, but not for consumption in bonded areas, and they can also donate wine to nonprofit organizations without charge. A lot more information about other exceptions and details about these exceptions in our manual as well as on the ABC's website. You can see a link there over to the ABC's website. The reports I was telling you about, we've got distillery and common carrier reports. The Department of Revenue we are required to allocate a portion of the gallonage tax to each county where a licensed distillery is located. And this is Tennessee. We've got a lot of these distilleries. For the department to make this allocation, distilleries are required to report on a monthly basis the number of gallons of product sold to wholesalers. And that is what you see, the distillery information report. There's also a common carrier report, or also known as the direct shipper report, where every common carrier other than a rail carrier, that was a law that passed a few years ago, that contracts with a direct shipper to deliver wine, beer, or other alcoholic beverages into Tennessee, you have to file a monthly report of those shipments by the 25th day of each month. So each report must include direct shipper name, business address, delivery recipient name and address, the weight of the package delivered to the recipient, a unique tracking number for the shipment, and the date of the delivery. And these reports are available must be made available under open records laws. All right, we're changing gears here, talking about some beer taxes. First, we're going to talk about the beer manufacturer and wholesale distributor registration. So every person in Tennessee who engages in the manufacture or wholesale distribution of beer is required to register with the Tennessee Department of Revenue and obtain a permit locally where the business is located. The state registration fee is $20 for wholesalers and $40 for manufacturers, and these entities must renew the registrations by January 1st each year. Businesses engaged in the sale, distribution, manufacture, or storage of beer must obtain that permit locally where the business is located. Beer wholesalers are required to obtain a permit from the county or city where they operate a warehouse. And that permit application fee, regardless of jurisdiction, is $250. The department only issues beer manufacturer and wholesaler registrations on an annual basis. We don't issue these registrations on a short-term or partial year basis, even if a beer manufacturer or wholesaler plans on doing business in Tennessee for less than a year. That we will impose a mandatory penalty against new registrants who fail to register within 20 days of beginning business, and against registrants who fail to renew by that January date each year. I believe it's due on January 1st, and I think if it's not received by the 20th, then there are penalties. Penalty is $5 per month for each month or part of a month, but cannot exceed the total amount of the applicable annual registration fee. All right, moving on here to the wholesale beer tax. It's imposed on every sale of beer by a wholesaler to any person other than the wholesaler. Generally, the wholesaler distributor is responsible for remitting the wholesale beer tax. However, beer manufacturers operating as retailers are responsible for remitting this tax on sales of beer they make to off-site retailers. It's important to note that beer manufacturers making sales of beer in their tap room, located on the same premises where the beer is manufactured, are not making wholesale sales, and these are not going to be subject to the wholesale beer tax. And that is very common. There are these beer manufacturing tap rooms all over the place now. So you see who pays it. Wholesaler, self-distributing manufacturer, it is $35.60 per 31-gallon barrel. You see an allocation or a breakdown there of how that $35.60 is broken down and where it goes to. And this is due on the 20th of each month. Some miscellaneous information about the wholesale beer tax that we're not going to go into detail today, but just wanted to show you here that there's information about each of these topics in the manual. Exceptions, adjustments for damaged containers, destruction of beer, gifts and discounts, designated sales territories, and wholesale price lists. If you're engaged in the sale of wholesale beer, again, I highly recommend you going to our manual, our alcohol tax manual that we linked over to on one of those first few slides, and reading more about these topics. Some bond information on this wholesale beer tax. Each wholesaler has to furnish a bond in the amount of gross sales of a gross wholesale beer tax. I'm just going to start that one over. Okay, each wholesaler must furnish a bond in the amount of gross wholesale beer tax based on their highest month sales in the preceding 12 months. So if you're just beginning business, this is going to be an estimate, and the bond amount will never exceed $10,000. A wholesaler that has been in continuous operation for 3 years and has timely paid all wholesale beer taxes during the preceding 6 months is not required to furnish a bond. Again, some exceptions to that 3-tiered system for beer manufacturers. So although a beer manufacturer is generally, of course, required to distribute product through the 3-tiered system, it can make retail sales of beer in instances such as self-distribution, if the manufacturer is also a restaurant, and then there is the specific exemption for a hotel where beer is manufactured in Blount County. I'm guessing that was a piece of legislation that made its way in based on a very popular farm located in Blount County. So self-distribution, a beer manufacturer may operate as a retailer at its manufacturing location or contiguous site I don't know if I said that word right, and sell up to 25,000 barrels of beer or high alcohol content beer per year for consumption on or off the premises, provided it obtains the appropriate retail license. So for restaurants or limited service restaurants, a manufacturer may hold a license as a restaurant or limited service restaurant and sell its beer for off-premise consumption at that restaurant location or any other licensed restaurant that is owned by the same person. All right, another beer tax here. So every person in this state that is manufacturing, storing, selling, importing, or distributing beer or other beverages of not more than 8% alcohol content by weight is subject to the beer barrelage tax. The beer barrelage tax is $4.29 per 31-gallon barrel stored, sold, or imported, or distributed by gift or sale or manufactured in this state. The tax is levied in addition to all other taxes and is solely a state tax that may not be levied by any county, municipality, or taxing district. And the tax is prorated for barrels containing more or less than 31 gallons of beer, and it is remitted to the Department of Revenue monthly on or before the 20th day of the month in which it accrues. So you can see here who pays it. If it's distributed through a Tennessee wholesaler, the wholesaler is responsible for paying the tax. A beer manufacturer is responsible for the tax when it operates as a retailer and sells its beer to other retailers within the same county, or when it operates as a retailer or holds a license as a restaurant, limited service restaurant, or hotel. As always, we've got some exceptions here. Some exceptions to the beer barrelage tax: beer manufactured in Tennessee and exported for sale, distribution, or gift, dispersed gratuitously or consumed on the manufacturing premises. So tastings there. Beer sold for consumption within the geographical boundaries of a fort, base, camp, or post of the armed forces. So just some exceptions there. More information about that in our manual as well. The bond requirement for the beer barrelage tax: a bond of $20,000 is required for the initial 12-month license period. After we have received monthly returns that cover the initial 3 full months of your operation, the taxpayer can submit a written request to reduce the bond amount to equal no less than 2 times the amount of the average monthly tax liability over the 3 preceding months. Again, if the taxpayer has been in continuous operation for 3 consecutive years and has paid timely for the preceding 6 months, you are no longer required to maintain a bond. Any taxpayer that is exempt from bonding requirement who subsequently fails to timely pay the beer barrelage tax will again be needed, will have to maintain a bond after that. So stay in good standing. Some miscellaneous information here about the beer barrelage tax. Regarding breweries, the sale of beer to the public from a tap room is subject to both sales tax and the beer barrelage tax. Beer that is sold and consumed on the premises is not deductible on line 3 of that beer barrelage tax return. And beer dispensed to customers as part of a paid-for brewery tour is subject to the beer barrelage tax. Tastings that are not free, even when a coupon for the same amount is issued to the customer, are considered taxable for beer barrelage tax. Sales tax should also be collected on all sales of retail products, including beer or liquor tastings, when a charge is made and the tastings are not provided free of charge and they're consumed on the premises. So if a taxpayer offers a discount, such as a buy one, get one free coupon, the amount sold is taxable for beer barrelage tax. The coupon simply reduced the sales price of the 2 items, and 1 item should not be listed on the line 3 of that return. All right, so we are going to do a whole liquor by the drink tax webinar on January 28th. I mentioned we were going to have an alcoholic beverages tax webinar just about those taxes. We're also going to be having a beer taxes webinar. I don't have either of those scheduled yet, so just be on the lookout. But we're not going to go into detail today about the liquor by the drink tax because we are going to have a whole webinar. We already have it scheduled, actually. to register for that webinar. You can always register for a webinar right after the previous month's webinar has taken place. So in December, be on the lookout for late December, be on the lookout for registration for this Liquor by the Drink webinar. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and invite our panel to come back online here, and I will turn on the chat for you to put your questions in for Kellen or Bernadette or any of us here. Let's see here.
Katie, can you repeat everything you just said, please?
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
Give me about 35 more minutes.
This is this is a lot. This is a whole lot.
Telling you, it
So
is.
so Katie mentioned something, super important too, and I know she'll go to it again to show you the alcohol manual that we have. That is a wonderful, wonderful document, along with our other tax manuals that we have out on our website. So we hope you can take advantage of that too. And just going through the different things there. Maybe we can start off by talking to Kellen for just a second. And Kellen, you work with these taxes on a daily basis, and I was just kind of wondering, what do you get a lot of questions about relative to this? Can you give us maybe one or two different things that you get a lot of calls about?
Yeah. So I would say the normal calls that we would get or questions we would get on these particular taxes is mainly possibly who handles the taxes or who handles the registration. So that beginning slide that Katie presented of like who does what was a pretty excellent slide of just breaking down, the taxes, the licenses, and even also the local government, because we do get a lot of calls about, like beer taxes or who handles the local beer registrations or the beer permit. And I believe that was a good slide of just basically just showing, and just breaking down, the different parts of the government.
Right. And Kellen, we recently had a change to bond requirements. Is that true?
Yeah, so we did have a change to bond requirements, mainly for liquor by the drink. Your initial bond, no matter if you have a full bar or you're doing wine only, you will start off at 10,000. And we do bond review, and your bond could go up or down from that amount, but your initial start will always be 10,000.
Right. And Bernadette, maybe I'll get you to comment on this, but bonding, I believe, is a requirement as imposed on by the Tennessee legislature. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's in the tax laws.
Yeah, so that's why we do it. Now, of course, one of the reasons I think that the legislature probably has decided to do this for many, many years is just to, quite honestly, ensure that the taxes ultimately remitted, because there's a lot of money involved in alcohol and alcohol taxes. So the bonding is required by law, but it's also ensures that the state receives compensation should a business go out of business. We're able to go against that bond. Um, and I guess we have a few questions here too that have come up here. Let me take a look here at a couple of these. Hang on just a second here. One of them says, "My company imports into Tennessee. Do we have to file a report for the beer that is imported? And if so, how do they file that?" So, do we have a comment on that one?
Yeah, so that sounds like brand registration. So if you're importing your beer into Tennessee, you would need to first make sure that you register that beer. And then you'll also need to make sure that you register as a manufacturer of beer and pay that $40 license. But once you do register your beer, there's no monthly taxes that you will pay on that registration. You would just renew your products every year and also renew your license every year.
Okay, very good. Very good. Very good. Another question I see that's come up, a client who wants to start providing complimentary beer, wine, and liquor with services. Do they have to file liquor by the drink taxes if it's complimentary?
Yeah, so it's even if it's free, you would still have to pay the taxes. I believe Katie did have a slide on that. So even if you're giving like a buy one get one free, where it's complimentary, they would still have to pay the taxes on that particular product, even if it's free.
Right. And Bernadette, you agree with that as well?
Yes, we call that it would be the tax instead of charging the client or the purchaser, you would pay the tax yourself.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. And of course, we'll have a liquor by the drink webinar in January that will discuss even more details about how some of this stuff works as well, too. Anybody else see another question or something that we can go into? No bond for direct wine shippers?
No
Sound
bond for
right?
direct wine shippers. You would
Okay.
just get the license from the TABC, the non-resident seller's license. Well, it's actually the direct shipper's license. And then once you get that license, you will register the tax accounts, and that's it. You won't have to have a bond for it.
Okay. James asked this question too. For individuals that operate an alternate premise facility or a co-packing facility for wine producers, are they on the hook for any of these taxes, or do those basically translate back to the wine producers, et cetera?
Let me try to go to that question. You said it was James. Let me see.
James at 938.
Can I ask, just a co-packing facility is not a term I'm familiar with. Can anybody elaborate on that for me?
James, if you want to type in something into chat there, we can kind of see that as well and kind of define a little bit better about what that is. Maybe we can circle back to that one.
Yeah, I'm looking in our manual right now to see if I can find a reference to that as well. So
I found the question for individuals operating an alternating premise facility. Yeah, I don't. You may have to make a note and get back with him individually.
yeah, I'll be
Right.
looking too for that.
This will be a good time to probably mention here in just a moment. Katie will give you a way that you can reach out to us for any of your unanswered questions by email specifically would be a really good idea on these technical topics. So we can get those over to Kellen and other people in his unit to research and get back with you on a very specific situation there too. So we'll be glad to do that too.
All right, I went ahead and loaded that slide onto here. You can see here we've got call information for Kellen's unit, the miscellaneous tax unit, 615-253-0680. And general tax questions for email can come to revenue.support@tn.gov. But if you've got questions about the any of the alcoholic beverage taxes, it's liquor.tax@tn.gov, and specific brand registration questions, brand.registration@tn.gov. That'll get routed to the people that handle this specific topic if you want to send questions directly to them regarding those topics.
Let's and thank you, Katie. Let's look at one of these questions here. Marge put a question in. I think it's pretty interesting. This is from just the retailers' standpoint, people that are selling this. So, if you had a small retail store that just sells bottles and cans of beers, are there any taxes beyond sales tax for that retailer?
No. So there's just sales tax if you're selling beer or wine. But for beer, you need to make sure that you get your beer permit from the local from your local county clerk. And then if you're selling wine in an establishment, you just make sure you get your retail liquor license from the ABC.
Right. So that's helpful to convenience store owners or people that might sell that, needing the local permitting, and then of course not being on the hook for any particular extra tax over and above that. And of course, I think what Katie had put in her presentation was important to see. It looks like a lot of these taxes rest with the wholesalers. You know, the wholesalers are sort of on the hook for doing a lot of this stuff. So it's that takes quite a bit of time and effort in administration. So we appreciate their diligence on everything from reporting and paying, but also accounting for things like breakage and theft and things of that nature too. So those things are quite important. Absolutely.
So it looks like James put a little bit more information there. I'm looking into that right now, James. Again, I don't know if we'll be able to find the answer to your question. So talking about, he said that legislation is passed that allows wine co-packing facilities to operate in Tennessee. I'm sorry that I don't have information about that right now, but we're going to look into it for you.
Yeah, we'll have
Alternation.
to circle back on that. That's a new
Mhm.
one for me too.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be glad to help you, James. Send us an email and let us look into it for you.
I'm making some notes on that to look into it as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Bernadette.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to see. We put the link for the manuals out there already. Somebody was looking for. Trying to see any other questions. I mean, we may miss your question. If we did, we apologize. There's a lot of technology going on here that's sort of hard to track. It's at different points there too. But at any rate, I'm not seeing much else out here. Kellen and Bernadette, do you have any comments that you want to leave folks with as we sort of wrap things up here?
I think, I don't want to put Kellen on the spot, but I see a question asking for an example of how to tax a buy one, get one free. And I assume that's,
Yeah, so that one mainly they would just report that on line 3 of the liquor by the drink tax return. So I usually tell people you'll still look at it as if you sold that drink, because you're still going to report the tax on that drink. So like if you sold one drink and you gave them one for free, you're still paying taxes on 2 drinks basically, or you're reporting taxes on 2 drinks. But just the actual sale, or I guess you can say the base price of the drink, the the recipient would not pay that.
I just made a note to definitely tackle that topic specifically when we have the Liquor by the Drink webinar,
Mhm.
especially having gotten a couple questions about it here. We'll tackle that subject when we have our webinar dedicated to Liquor by the Drink for sure. I think that seems like a popular topic.
Yeah.
And not to beat a dead horse, but going back to some of the compliance things there too. Um, you know, like spillage and breakage and theft and all that other stuff, and the buy ones get ones and all that. That dictates into things that if there's a liquor audit involved, where there's an on-site review of what you have in stock, that's going to come up. So you've got to account for that kind of stuff. So making sure that all of your reporting is exactly right is quite important.
Record keeping and reporting is definitely critical with all taxes, but especially with this because there are, like you mentioned, Billy, so many variables.
Also,
And this is a very regulated
yeah,
industry.
and destruction also of old product, things that are out of date, things of that nature. Yeah, it's a big deal. And of course, most of the wholesalers that may be on this webinar and all that, you guys probably know a lot of that stuff and are very keyed into it. But we certainly want to make sure everybody's kind of in the same loop on this stuff. Very good. Does anyone have any other comments or anything else we need to address?
I just want to bring to everybody's attention here what you see on your screen, ways to follow us. Recommend if you have a business in any way, shape, or form following the Department of Revenue in Tennessee in multiple ways to stay in the loop, and how to reach out to Kellen's group. I want to let you all know about some upcoming webinars we've got. I already told you about a Liquor by the Drink one. We usually don't announce these more than a couple months out, but I thought it would be appropriate to tell you that we're going to be having that one in January. But also next month, we are doing franchise and excise tax basics. And then in November, marketplace sellers and facilitators. And these webinars that we offer are always on the last Tuesday of the month. We are also having a new business workshop. We offer that event quarterly. It's a virtual new business workshop. You can register for that. The next one's on October 2nd by clicking on our website, tn.gov/revenue, and then taxpayer education and outreach, and then new business workshops. So if you've got the PDF right now, you can also click on this link.
Hey, Katie, before we end, would you go back 2 slides? I want to show
Sure.
them one more time the phone number in the lower right corner. That is specifically for Kellen and his crew in the miscellaneous tax unit. 615-253-0680, basically 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, except for holidays. And we're really glad to help you on that. Kellen and his whole team, supervisor is Kelly Emerson in that area. She does a great job. All the folks that work in there have worked in there for quite some time, and they know stuff. So reach out to them. But the email through revenue.support@tn.gov is appreciated for many of your technical areas. And we appreciate your attention on this today. Thanks.
I see a question on here that I think we can answer real quick here.
Okay, good.
James has asked, how do we apply for the manufacturing, industrial, and machinery equipment exemption? And if you go on the department's website, there is an application form for that exemption. You fill that form out, you submit it to the department, it goes in for review. If you just type in industrial machinery exemption or something of that nature, it should pop up. It's a sales use tax thing, yes.
Yeah, Katie's showing you how to do it. You just go to forms under sales tax.
Let me back up. I'm on tn.gov/revenue under taxes. Going to click on sales tax. Of course, you can just use the search bar. It might bring up more stuff though. Under sales tax, under forms. There's a ton down here. This is where I might even do.
It's about 8 down.
Here. There we go.
There it is right there. Yeah.
Yep.
We actually have a webinar dedicated to this topic. So if you want to search our webinar video library and get a little bit more information about details on.
And James, what you'll want to do is you'll want to fill this out and then scan it and then email it to us at revenue.support@tn.gov instead of sending it in through the regular mail. We'll get it a little quicker and we can work it faster that way for you. Okay. So yeah, we appreciate the fact that folks can email these application forms to us because we can get to it a little quicker.
Crystal wanted us to go over the calculation between by volume and by weight again. Basically, to convert from alcohol by volume to alcohol by weight, you use alcohol by volume times 0.8, and that gives you alcohol by weight. It would have been cool if the law had just stuck to what the industry standard uses.
I run into that frequently. Yes, I run into that frequently. And I'm like, yeah.
We don't make the laws, y'all.
The laws are made across the street from our building. So
that's right.
You know, and the street is wide and busy. So,
right.
You know, we do the best we can, folks. That's all we can tell you. But again, we thank you very much. And Katie wants to tell you about how to get your CPE credit.
Yeah, if, on your way out here, y'all, if you could just fill out the quick survey, just asking you how what you thought of the webinar, but also if you are a tax professional and get CPE credit, you do get CPE credit for attending this. You just have to answer the question that asks if you want CPE credit, answer yes, and then if you could please just add your name as you would like it on your certificate. So with that, we appreciate you all being here today. Kellen, Bernadette, thank you all both so much for being here. Couldn't have done it without y'all for sure.
Thank
and
you.
hopefully we'll see you at the next webinar.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Have a good one.